Ready to explore the world of Oz.
Always.
Me too. But we're going beyond the yellow brick road this time.
Oh.
Yeah, we're taking a deep dive into the origins of Wicked
Wicked.
and how it connects to the wider world of Oz.
It sounds fascinating.
It is. It all started as a children's book, but then
But then what?
sequels, comics, movies, you name it, even a hit Broadway show.
It's incredible how one book could spark so many adaptations.
It really is, and that's what we're going to unpack today. How did a children's book become this cultural phenomenon?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with Frank Baum, the author of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. He didn't just write one book, you know.
Oh, wait, really? There's more to Oz than The Wonderful Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yeah. He actually wrote 13 sequels.
13! Wow, I had no idea. So what did he write about in those sequels?
Sometimes Dorothy returns to Oz, but he also introduced new characters and places. For example, in The Marvelous Land of Oz, we meet a character named Tip.
Tip.
Yeah. Tip actually becomes Princess Ozma, the rightful ruler of Oz.
Princess Ozma. That's interesting.
There's actually this gender-bending element to the plot, which is pretty unexpected for a book written in the early 1900s. Yeah.
Wow, so Baum was ahead of his time in some ways.
He really was. And it makes you wonder what he was trying to say about societal expectations, even back then.
Right, like what does it mean to be a princess? What does it mean to rule? Those are big questions.
Exactly. And Baum was exploring those themes over a century ago.
It's like he laid the groundwork for modern fantasy series like Lord of the Rings, you know, these intricate worlds with their own rules and histories.
Absolutely. Baum was a pioneer of world building. In books like Ozma of Oz and The Road to Oz, he takes us beyond the Emerald City,
To where?
places like the Deadly Desert.
Oof, that sounds intense. Just the name itself evokes this feeling of danger.
Right, you can practically feel the heat and see the swirling sand. Baum was a master at creating these vivid images.
So we've got these intricate stories and the sprawling world. But Oz doesn't stay confined to the pages of books, does it?
No way. It finds new life in comics, films, you name it. And the adaptations are all over the map.
Like what?
You've got the iconic 1939 film, of course, but then you have Return to Oz from the 1980s, which is much darker, weirder, a cult classic for a reason.
I remember Return to Oz. It was a little creepy, but in a good way.
Exactly. And then there's Oz the Great and Powerful, which tells the origin story of the wizard, how he ended up in Oz in the first place.
So many different ways to tell the same story. But perhaps the most intriguing take on The Wizard of Oz is the idea that it's a political allegory.
Ah, yes, the political allegory. There's a whole school of thought that sees The Wizard of Oz as a commentary on American politics and economics in the late 19th century.
Specifically, the populist movement.
That's right.
Okay, I vaguely remember the populists from a history class, but can you give us a quick refresher? What were they all about?
Well, they were mostly farmers and laborers who felt like the system was rigged against them.
In what way?
Well, they were struggling financially and felt like the government wasn't doing enough to help them. So they were fighting for things like economic equality, more government regulation to protect the common person, things like that.
Interesting. Okay, so how does The Wizard of Oz fit into all this?
Well, many people believe the characters and symbols represent real-world counterparts, like Dorothy, for instance.
What about Dorothy?
A lot of people see her as representing the common person, trying to navigate this confusing and sometimes treacherous world. Sound familiar?
Yeah, I can see that. And what about the others? The Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Cowardly Lion? Do they have political meanings too?
Oh, absolutely. The Scarecrow, who thinks he's stupid but is actually quite clever, represents farmers.
Really?
Yep, they were often underestimated but were actually very resourceful and intelligent, just like the Scarecrow.
That makes sense. What about the Tin Man? I always thought he was so sad, like he was missing something essential.
Exactly. And that's why many believe he symbolizes dehumanized industrial workers. You know, the people who are struggling to survive in a rapidly industrializing society.
Oh, wow. So he represents the people who felt like cogs in a machine, just going through the motions without any real heart.
That's the idea. And then you have the Cowardly Lion.
What about him?
Some say he's William Jennings Bryan.
Who was William Jennings Bryan?
He was a famous populist leader known for his powerful speeches. But some people criticize him for not being bold enough in his actions, hence the Cowardly Lion.
Ah, I get it. So we've got these characters, each representing a different facet of the populist struggle. But what about all those iconic symbols in the story, like the yellow brick road?
Oh, those are important too. The yellow brick road represents the gold standard, which was a big economic issue at the time.
Refresh my memory on the gold standard.
Sure, basically it meant that the value of the dollar was tied to the amount of gold the government had in reserve. The populace didn't like this because they felt it limited the amount of money in circulation, making it harder for ordinary people to get loans and make ends meet.
I see. And what about those ruby slippers? They have to symbolize something too, right?
Oh, definitely. Actually, in the book, they were silver, not ruby.
Silver.
Yeah. And they represent bimetallism, the idea of using both gold and silver to back the currency. The populace were big fans of that.
So it's like having dollar bills, A&D coins, instead of just relying on dollar bills. Gives people more options.
Exactly. And then you have the Emerald City, all sparkly and promising.
What about it?
It symbolizes the false promises of wealth and prosperity that many people felt the government was making.
So it's all an illusion, just like the wizard himself.
Precisely. The wizard, who talks a big game but can't actually deliver, represents those in power who fail to live up to their promises.
Wow. I never realized how much symbolism was packed into this seemingly simple children's story.
Right. It's amazing what you can find when you start digging beneath the surface. But, you know, the political allegory is just one way to interpret The Wizard of Oz. It's a story that speaks to much deeper human experiences as well.
Like what?
Like the search for identity,
Yeah.
the longing for home. Those are universal themes that resonate with everyone, no matter what their political beliefs are.
That's so true. And let's not forget the feminist themes in the story.
Absolutely. Dorothy is no damsel in distress. She's a problem solver, she's resourceful, and she's ultimately the one who drives the story forward.
And Glinda the Good Witch. She's this powerful figure who helps guide Dorothy along the way.
Such a great example of female strength and wisdom. It's part of what makes The Wizard of Oz so enduring. It works on so many levels.
It really does. But our journey through Oz doesn't end with Baum's books. The story takes on a whole new dimension when it's brought to the stage.
Broadway, here we come. And trust me, some of the most radical and insightful reinterpretations of Oz come from the stage, starting with The Wiz, which premiered back in 1974.
Ooh, tell me more about The Wiz. What makes it so special?
Well, for starters, it reimagines Oz with an all-black cast and the setting, an urban environment that really resonates with the Black American experience.
That's amazing. It's like they took this classic story and made it their own.
Exactly. They use music and dance to explore themes of identity and empowerment within the Black community. It's a complete shift in perspective.
Wow, that's powerful. And of course, we can't forget about the biggest Oz adaptation of them all, Wicked.
Wicked, the Broadway phenomenon.
Exactly. It's like the ultimate reimagining of Oz.
It dives deep into the Wicked Witch's backstory, turning her into a much more complex and even sympathetic character.
She's not just evil anymore.
Not at all. In Wicked, you start to understand her motivations, her pain, her struggles. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about good versus evil, about the power of labels.
So we've got The Wiz exploring race and identity, and Wicked challenging our notions of morality. What's the big takeaway here? Why are these adaptations so important?
I think they show us the power of seeing a story through different lenses. They remind us that there are always multiple perspectives, and that even a story we think we know can be completely transformed when we approach it with fresh eyes.
And speaking of fresh eyes, Oz hasn't stopped evolving. There's Emerald City, the TV series, and The Legends of Oz, the animated film.
You're right. It feels like this world just keeps finding ways to stay relevant.
It does. But why?
I think it's because the core themes of The Wizard of Oz, identity, home, the struggle against oppression, they're timeless and universal.
Yeah.
They speak to something deep within all of us.
And that's what keeps us coming back for more, isn't it? No matter how many times we've been to Oz, there's always something new to discover.
There is. Something about Oz truly captures the imagination.
Doesn't it? Why do you think that is? Why does this world continue to resonate with people, even after all these years?
That's a great question. I think on one level, it's pure escapism.
It's this fantastical place where anything is possible. It's full of magic and wonder, and it offers this escape from the everyday world.
Yeah. It allows us to believe in something beyond the ordinary, to step into a world where the impossible, it becomes possible.
And that's especially appealing when you're a kid, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. When you're young, the world can seem so big and confusing, and Oz is like this safe space.
Yeah.
Where your imagination can run wild. It's a place where you can be whoever you want to be. Anything can happen.
I love that. But it's more than just escapism, right?
Right. Oz also taps into our deepest desires and anxieties.
Regardless of our age.
Yeah, I think so. Dorothy's Journey, it's this universal story about finding your place in the world, facing challenges, discovering the power within yourself.
That's like those themes resonate with everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a child, a teenager, or an adult. We all face obstacles. We all search for belonging, and we yearn for that feeling of home, even if we don't know exactly what that looks like.
Exactly. And you know what? Despite their fantastical qualities, the characters in Oz are surprisingly relatable.
They are.
Think about Dorothy's determination, the Scarecrow's longing for intelligence, the Tin Man's desire for a heart, even the Cowardly Lion's struggle with fear.
We see parts of ourselves in them, don't we?
I think so. They're flawed, they're vulnerable, and I think that's what makes their eventual triumphs even more satisfying.
It's true. It reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles, and that even the most unlikely heroes can overcome adversity. But we can't forget the visual appeal of Oz, can we?
We can't. It's iconic.
It is.
Hmm.
From the vibrant Emerald City to those whimsical creatures that inhabit this world,
Yeah.
Oz is a feast for the senses. It's a place that begs to be explored and imagined. And I think it sparks creativity and wonder in a way that few other stories can.
It does. So it's like the combination of all these elements, the escapism, the relatable characters, those timeless themes, the visual splendor.
It's everything.
It is, and that's what makes Oz so enduring.
And it's really a testament to L. Frank Baum's creativity and vision. He created this world that continues to inspire and enchant us generation after generation.
He really did. It makes you wonder what the future holds for Oz.
Doesn't it? Do you think we'll see new adaptations, new interpretations?
Oh, I have no doubt. The beauty of Oz is that it's an ever-evolving world. It's this canvas where each generation can project their own hopes, dreams, and fears. It's a story that'll continue to be retold and reinterpreted as long as people have imaginations.
And speaking of reinterpretations, we were talking about Wicked earlier.
Hmm.
It really dives into the heart of those ideas, doesn't it?
Oh, it absolutely does. Wicked. It's fascinating because it completely flips the script on the traditional Oz narrative.
It does. We're so used to thinking of Glinda as the good witch and Elphaba as the villain. But Wicked makes us rethink those labels.
Totally. Wicked gives us Elphaba's perspective, her side of the story. We see how she becomes labeled wicked because she's different, an outsider.
And it's not just a personality quirk that makes her different, is it? It's literally woven into her appearance.
You got it. In the musical, Elphaba's green skin makes her stand out from both. It's this powerful way to explore prejudice and social ostracization. You know, she's immediately judged based on how she looks, not who she is.
And that makes you really empathize with Elphaba, even though, she eventually becomes the Wicked Witch of the West.
Exactly. And that's what makes her such a compelling character, She's not just evil. She's driven by a desire for justice.
Yeah.
A world where people aren't judged based on appearances. She's fighting against a system that's already decided who she is.
And her relationship with Glinda is so interesting, too. They start as rivals, but then their friendship becomes the central thread in the story.
Oh, it's such a complex relationship.
Yeah.
Full of misunderstandings, betrayals, but also this genuine affection. It really shows how even those with opposing viewpoints can find common ground.
It's almost like Glinda represents the status quo, the accepted way of doing things,
Right.
while Elphaba is the rebel, the one who challenges authority.
And how those who challenge authority often get labeled as dangerous or wicked. Wicked makes you think about how society silences or dismisses those who don't conform.
It's like, Elphaba is told she's wicked, so she starts to act accordingly. It's a powerful message, and a bit tragic, how labels can become self-fulfilling prophecies.
But there's hope in Wicked, too.
There is.
Yeah. Both Elphaba and Glinda, they find their own kind of power, even if it's not what they expected.
Like they grow and change throughout the story.
Exactly. Glinda learns that being popular and well-liked, it isn't the same as being a true leader.
Right.
And Elphaba, even though she's ostracized, finds strength in her convictions. She refuses to compromise who she is.
It's a powerful message, especially for anyone who's ever felt like they don't fit in. Wicked is like, hey, it's okay to be different.
Challenge the norm.
Fight for what you believe in, even when it's hard. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Oz today, I think the most important thing to remember is this. The journey isn't over. The yellow brick road stretches on, inviting all of us to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep discovering the magic within ourselves and the world around us.
The possibilities are endless, just like the world of Oz itself.
And that's it for our Oz adventure. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive and that you'll continue to explore the wondrous and sometimes wicked world of Oz.